Hello and welcome to Immigration USA with Kathia. Today we're going to talk about several news. Everything is happening so fast, and while the government keeps trying to deport as many immigrants as possible, the courts are stopping the government from the abuse of power that they're using against immigrants. So let's start and let's go from the beginning. The first news that I want to tell you is a federal judge has just ordered the government to stop all deportations under the Alien Enemies Act because the judge has found that the Tren de Aragua cannot be considered an alien enemy. And why is that? How did this happen? Well, the Alien Enemies Act, it's a law that from the 1798 that claims that in times of war and in times when another country is attacking us, we as a country can take emergency measures against these alien enemies. Well, the President Trump and his government decided that the Tren de Aragua was a terrorist organization that was attacking the United States. And for that reason, he declared that they were alien enemies. Well, the judge has said, no, they could be terrorists, but they are not another country attacking us. They are not Venezuela. The Tren de Aragua is not is the head of the Tren de Aragua is not the Venezuelan president. So because you cannot make that connection between the Venezuelan government and the Tren de Aragua, we cannot claim that you cannot claim the Alien Enemies Act. And so for that reason, the judge says we cannot use the Alien Enemies Act to deport all these Venezuelan criminals, basically. So for now, until this decision is appealed, for now, nobody can be removed from the United States under the Alien Enemies Act. That is news number one. Let's go to news number two. Another decision from a court. And why is this happening? Why are the courts stopping the government from doing whatever they want to do? Well, because in this country, we have a system of checks and balances. And while we have three very distinct powers in the United States, we have the executive, President Trump, and all the government offices. We have Congress, the legislative branch, Congress, who creates the laws. And we have the judiciary, the judicial power, which are the courts. So all of them have to act according to what the Constitution says. And when the executive branch, the president, decides to do something, he has to follow the law, the Constitution. And who decides what is constitutional or not? Well, that's what the judges are for. They study the law, they're lawyers, they are the ones who can decide whether what Congress or what the president wants to do is constitutional. So that's why you see all this news about judges stopping the government from doing whatever it is that they want to do. Okay, so what is this decision from this new judge? Well, a judge freed a student from Columbia University who is a legal permanent resident, who was trying to become a citizen, who had been detained by the government, being accused of being a terrorist because he was doing protests against the war between Israel and Palestine. And because he was supporting Palestine, the government said, you are a terrorist and we are going to strip you from your green card because you were in this protest and you expressed your anti-Israel sentiment. Well, the judge, he's been detained for a long time, and the judge yesterday said, this guy has to go free. And you may try to deport him and you may try to take his green card away from him, but we cannot deprive him of his freedom just because he expressed an idea, a political opinion that is different from the government's political opinion. So that is a very good decision. That it's a decision that does not allow this guy to remain in the United States or to become a citizen. No, he's just free for now. And he's going to have to continue going through his deportation process and the federal court case where he's fighting for his right to express his opinions, freedom of speech. Because apparently for the government, legal permanent residents don't have freedom of speech, but the Constitution says immigrants do. So all of this is going to play in the courts, and we are going to see what's going to happen. But that was news number 2. Let's go to news number 3. Well, the news number 3 is that the judge who was detained for blocking ICE from detaining an immigrant in her court has been suspended by the Wisconsin court, by the Wisconsin Supreme Court, while she goes through the process of defending herself in federal court against the accusations of the government that she interfered with their job. So that, some people see it as something really bad that she was suspended. I think she needs the time and the energy to defend herself. She's a very well-known judge, and she was acting under the powers that she had in her courtroom, and specifically because she was not supposed to obey any order from any other judge. The only way she would have been obstructing ICE is if the ICE officers had an arrest warrant against this man that they were looking for, but they did not have an arrest warrant signed by the judge. And that's why it's so important that when ICE is looking for someone, that the immigrants have knowledge of their rights and are able to ask, do you have an arrest warrant signed by a judge? If the arrest warrant is not signed by the judge, then they cannot detain you unless you agree to it, unless you open the door to it. So I think the judge is going to be fined, and she needs the time and the energy to defend herself. Another decision from another court. Today I have many decisions from courts. Well, another decision is one that stops the government from moving an immigrant that they have detained from one state to another, just to avoid, to stop that person from defending themselves. So why does these things happen? Why is that a person who lives in Vermont is detained in Vermont, but it's taken to Louisiana? Because in Louisiana, the judges are more conservative and they are more anti-immigrant. Or why is that a person is detained in Los Angeles and it's taken to Texas? Why is this happening? Well, sometimes it happens just because the government doesn't want this person to have more lenient judges. Sometimes, other times it's because they want to expedite the processing of the deportation and they don't want to give them time for immigrants to look for their lawyers, for the lawyers to be able to contact the court. All of that takes time. So this decision, it's a very good decision from a judge that says, you can't do that. If you're going to detain someone in one state, you have to remain on that state and allow that immigrant the opportunity to defend themselves in that state, which is, I think it's a wonderful decision. So kudos to the judge, and let's hope that we survive during the appeals, because most likely the government is going to appeal. Let me see. Another very good news is a California federal judge decided that as long as the government has money in their budget to pay for attorneys who defend and accompany minors, the government has to keep funding that. The government has to keep paying immigration lawyers who were hired to represent and accompany minors. And accompany minors are kids who are abandoned, who were turned to immigration authorities as mainly orphans. They don't have father, mother. They are in the United States by themselves. And these kids are in deportation proceedings because there is no age limit for deportation proceedings. So we have a law that says that as long as there is money, then the government should find lawyers to represent these kids. In immigration court, most adults are not represented by the government. There's no money for that. Immigrants can hire their own lawyers. But in the case of these tiny little children, the government pays for the defense lawyer. Now, as soon as President Trump came into power, then he cut that funding. But a judge has said today that as long as there is money in the budget, they have to keep funding and paying these lawyers, which is really good because there are little kids. It's none of this is their fault, and if there is money, well, we should be trying to help these little kids. Let me see. What else? I have more news to tell you. I told you already that. I'm looking. Oh, the executive actions. President Trump signed 2 executive actions. One of them instructs the Department of Homeland Security to list all the sanctuary cities. And why does President Trump wants to do that? Well, he really wants to find ways in which he can penalize the cities and the states who do not want to do what he wants to do against immigrants. There are several states that have a very big immigrant population and that depend on this immigrant population for basic needs. And so these are immigrants who do chores and jobs that most Americans don't want to do. And so these states do not want to pursue immigrants in the way President Trump wants to do it. So he first tried to stop from giving them the money from the IRS, the money from the federal government. And the courts stopped him and said, no, you cannot do that. You cannot withhold the money from the federal budget just because they don't do whatever you want. So now he's trying to figure out other ways, and that's why he's done this executive order. Now, the other part is, the other executive order is to ensure that truck drivers speak English. Now, this requirement that truck drivers speak and understand English is not new. It's very old. All truck drivers, commercial truck drivers, should understand all the traffic signs in English and should be able to understand what happens in English. Now, the truth is, all commercial truck drivers need to pass very rigorous driving exams, and they do it in English. However, some of them are not proficiently fluent speaking English. Now, who decides who is fluent in English and who is not? That's a question that it's going to be very difficult to answer. So I believe that right now we're at a shortage of truck drivers in the United States. If somebody tries to enforce these new executive order, and this enforcement goes directly against brown truck drivers, it's going to be another way to discriminate against Hispanic truck drivers. It's not going to help the United States because we are going to be at an even bigger shortage of truck drivers. And the country cannot go through that again. We had the same problem during the pandemic, and it was a disaster. So now we need to figure out ways in which to help more people to become commercial truck drivers instead of instigating to demonize those who are not perfectly fluent. Horrible decision, but it is what it is. Now, my last news, it's about a new bill in Congress, who is right now at the House of Representatives, that it's trying to give a lot of billions of dollars to ICE so they can continue deporting more people. And it's also trying to put a fee amount to asylum applications. During all these years, the asylum application has been a free application because it's an application for people who are running desperately away from their countries seeking protection from the United States. Now the government wants to charge $1,000 for each asylum application, and they want for employment authorizations to be valid only for 6 months at a cost of $550 per person for 6 months with no fee waivers available. So this is part of the new bill that is in Congress. We don't know what's going to happen. It's really sad because with these new measures, most likely nobody who is poor will be able to apply for asylum, and it'll be only left for those who have the means and the resources to come and ask for protection in the United States without the need to work. These have been all the news of this week so far. I will keep you posted in all my social media channels under Immigration USA with Kathia. Thank you for being here with us. Bye.